Anika Verma thought she had full control. Bryce Callahan made sure she didn't. The 23-year-old Indian student came to Los Angeles with dreams of success, but her secret relationship with the wealthy and obsessive tech investor would drag her into a deadly spiral. As her carefully guarded double life began to unravel, so did the mask worn by the man she trusted most. What started as an arrangement turned into a fatal mistake, and by the time the truth surfaced, it was already too late. Anika Verma had always been the pride of her family. Born and raised in Pune, India, she was the kind of daughter who followed rules, studied hard, and made her parents proud by securing admission into a prestigious graduate program in Los Angeles. When she landed in the U, she quickly settled into a modest apartment in Koreatown with another Indian student, Nisha Rawat. To everyone around her, Anika's life looked like a perfect balance of academics and opportunity. She carried herself with quiet elegance, never too loud, never too flashy, just the right amount of mystery that made her peers admire and envy her at the same time. But what most people didn't know was that Los Angeles was expensive, even with a student loan, a part-time research stipend, and occasional tutoring. Anika couldn't keep up with the lifestyle she secretly desired. She didn't just want to survive, she wanted to thrive. She had dreams of living like the women she followed on Instagram: weekend trips, expensive skincare routines, designer handbags. Nisha noticed the subtle signs: a new phone, expensive perfume, high-end groceries, but never questioned it. Anika always paid her share of the rent on time and claimed she had landed a few good freelance gigs. In reality, Anika had stumbled upon a sugar daddy website late one night during her first semester. After searching for alternative ways to make money, it started out as curiosity, but soon it became a hidden part of her life. Under a fake name and a carefully chosen set of photos, she connected with several older men. Most were dull or demanding, but one stood out: Bryce Callahan. He was older, sophisticated, and came from old Silicon Valley money. He promised her a life of comfort with no strings attached. At first, Anika kept her distance, wary of what this arrangement would mean. But Bryce was patient and generous. He took her to quiet restaurants, gave her expensive gifts, and offered large sums just to spend time with him. It wasn't long before Anika's life changed. She wore designer sunglasses to class, posted vague Instagram stories from rooftop bars, and stopped taking the metro altogether. Still, she never told anyone about Bryce. It was her secret world, one she believed she had full control over. She kept the boundaries clear and told herself that she was always the one in charge. But behind Bryce's charming smile and refined manners was a darker side. Over time, he became more possessive. He would demand to know where she was going, call her repeatedly, and ask probing questions about her friends and schedule. Anika tried to brush it off, telling herself he was just a jealous older man. She didn't want to lose the financial stability he provided, so she tolerated it. During her second year, Anika began to feel trapped. She wanted to end things with Bryce and return to a normal life, maybe even date someone her own age. But the thought of losing the lifestyle she had built frightened her. Worse, she had grown accustomed to the security his money provided. Still, the growing discomfort in his behavior pushed her to the edge. She started to avoid him, turned down his dinner invitations, and ignored his late-night messages. That's when things took a darker turn. Bryce began showing up uninvited near her campus. He sent her threatening messages disguised as sweet concern. Anika confided to herself in her digital journal, saved under encrypted folders, something only she could access. She wrote about feeling watched, followed, and emotionally cornered. Then, one Friday evening, Anika left the apartment dressed in a simple white blouse and jeans. She told Nisha she had to meet someone for a quick dinner. She didn't return that night, nor the next. Nisha assumed she was spending the weekend with friends, maybe out of town, but by Monday, her calls went unanswered. Her phone was off, The bed untouched, backpack left behind. Something felt wrong. What no one knew at that moment was that Anika's secret life had already caught up with her. And now that secret was about to unfold in the most terrifying way. By Monday morning, Anika's absence was impossible to ignore. Her professors marked her missing from an important seminar, and she failed to submit a project she had been working on for weeks. Nisha, now growing deeply worried, visited the campus administration to report that her roommate hadn't returned home since Friday evening. The university filed a missing person report with the LAPD, and by evening, Detective Raul Mendez had been assigned to the case. A seasoned investigator known for his calm demeanor and sharp instincts, Mendez started with the most basic question: who was Anika Verma? Her university records painted a picture of a high-achieving student, well-liked, but somewhat private. Her social media was curated, showing the surface of a happy and glamorous life in Los Angeles, but offering little insight into her personal connections. She posted occasionally about classes in city views, but avoided tagging friends or revealing locations. Her online presence was more aesthetic than authentic, and Mendez noted it as a possible red flag. People with secrets often crafted careful facades. He visited her apartment, where Nisha answered with red, sleepless eyes. Inside, Anika's room was eerily neat: bed made, books stacked, closet closed. Her laptop sat on the desk, untouched since Friday. Nisha explained that Anika had gone out for dinner that night and hadn't returned. Mendez asked about her friends, boyfriends, or anyone she might have gone to meet. Nisha shook her head, hesitating before admitting that Anika never really talked about anyone in her personal life. She was private to the point of secrecy. When the detective examined Anika's laptop, he found a dual-layered user account. The visible side was full of college files, documents, and academic folders. But a deeper dive led him to an encrypted partition, protected by a string of complex passwords. With the help of a forensic tech specialist, the partition was eventually unlocked. Inside, Mendez discovered folders labeled with code strings of numbers and initials. Some contained emails, screenshots of financial transfers, and photographs. One man appeared again and again: Bryce Callahan. A quick background check showed that Bryce was a 48-year-old tech entrepreneur turned investor, living in a luxury estate in Pasadena. Twice divorced, no children, and a history of starting companies that were later bought out for millions. The detective noted something interesting: Bryce had no prior police records, but his name surfaced in a sealed civil complaint from 5 years ago. A woman had accused him of coercion and emotional manipulation during a financial relationship, but the matter was settled privately. Mendez paid a visit to Bryce's home. The estate was impressive, modern, minimalist, and guarded by high walls. Bryce opened the door himself, composed and courteous. He admitted knowing Anika, describing her as a bright young woman he had mentored through a tech scholarship foundation. He claimed they were no longer in touch and that she had cut him off weeks ago. He expressed concern, but maintained that he hadn't seen or spoken to her recently. His tone was controlled, but Mendez sensed a practiced calm, like someone who had prepared for this moment. Surveillance footage from Anika's apartment building was pulled next. Over the past 2 months, Bryce's black Maserati had been seen outside her building on at least 6 occasions. The last sighting was Friday night, around 8:30 p.m. Anika was seen entering his car. She never came back, with no further digital activity from her phone and no trace of her since. The case officially shifted from a missing person to suspected foul play. Police began canvassing Bryce's neighborhood, checking his movements, and reviewing toll booth and gas station footage. But everything seemed clean. No traffic violations, no suspicious stops, no transactions on his card. Mendez's next step was to question Bryce's employees and personal contacts. Most described him as intense but generous. One person stood out: Jade Kingston, his former assistant who had left the job abruptly 6 months ago. She refused to speak over the phone, but hinted at something disturbing. The detective scheduled an in-person meeting. As he walked back to his car, he already knew this case was going to get much darker. Anika wasn't just missing. She was buried under something far more sinister, and Bryce Callahan was no ordinary suspect. The discovery came by accident. 3 weeks after Anika's disappearance, a jogger in the Angeles National Forest noticed an odd patch of soil just off a lesser-known hiking trail. Something about the area looked disturbed, mud unevenly packed. Twigs snapped unnaturally, the subtle shift in color and texture that didn't match the rest of the terrain. The jogger reported it, not expecting much. But when law enforcement arrived and began digging, the nightmare that everyone feared was confirmed. A body, wrapped hastily in a bedsheet and bound with duct tape, lay partially decomposed under the earth. The coroner's initial assessment indicated it had been buried for nearly 3 weeks. The victim was a young woman, dental records confirmed. What Detective Raul Mendez already suspected. It was Anika Verma. Her death had been violent. The autopsy revealed bruising on her neck, consistent with manual strangulation, broken capillaries in her eyes, and multiple contusions along her arms suggesting a struggle. There were no signs of sexual assault, but her phone and ID were missing. The only thing left on her body was a delicate bracelet, one that Nisha later identified as a gift Anika always wore. The media erupted. A promising young international student found murdered in the hills outside Los Angeles. Her story became headline news across both the U.S. and India, with cries for justice and safety for foreign students echoing from every direction. Detective Mendez doubled down. He reviewed every shred of evidence again. Bryce Callahan remained the prime suspect, the last person seen with her, the man whose car she entered on the night she disappeared. Yet, so far, nothing physical tied him to the murder. The burial site offered no fingerprints, no tire tracks, no items left behind. But Mendez had something even stronger: cell tower data. Records placed Bryce's phone pinging a tower less than 2 miles from the burial site late that Friday night. He had claimed to be at home, watching a movie alone. But phone records painted a different story. Still, it wasn't enough to arrest him. Circumstantial at best, Mendez decided to dig into Bryce's history further. Not just criminal records, but digital fingerprints. A search warrant for Bryce's smart home system was granted. His home security logs were unusual. Gaps in footage. Motion sensor logs turned off for the garage area for a 3-hour window on the night Anika vanished. His car GPS had been recently wiped, something a tech-savvy person might do intentionally. Yet again, not direct evidence, but building suspicion. Then came the anonymous email. A single message sent to the LAPD tip line. Check the garage. No sender, no traceable IP, just those 3 words. It arrived late one night, and it was enough to obtain a more thorough warrant. When detectives returned to Bryce's estate and inspected the garage, they noticed something odd. A vintage car sat covered in the corner, a classic Mustang with expired plates and a dusty frame. In the trunk, beneath layers of old towels and storage boxes, was a locked, rusted metal toolbox. Inside the box were gloves with dried stains, a shattered mobile phone, and a roll of duct tape. The gloves tested positive for blood. Forensics quickly matched it to Anika. The shattered phone, after data recovery, was identified as hers. Mendez finally had what he needed. Blood-stained material, missing property, and deception from a man who claimed he hadn't seen Anika in weeks. Bryce was taken into custody under suspicion of murder. He denied everything, claimed the items were planted, insisted the email was part of a setup. But his calm demeanor had begun to crack. For the first time, Bryce Callahan looked unsettled. As the case gained traction in national media, other voices began to surface. Women who had known Bryce, former assistants, ex-partners, even anonymous contacts who spoke of his manipulative behavior, his need for control, and the financial power he wielded to keep women silent. Detective Mendez sensed that Anika's murder might only be the surface of something far more, disturbing a pattern cloaked in charm, privilege, and cold calculation. The arrest of Bryce Callahan sent shockwaves through both the media and the community. A man long admired for his business acumen and charitable donations was now facing murder charges. As reporters camped outside the courthouse and pundits dissected every detail of his past, Detective Raul Mendez continued working behind the scenes, knowing the trial would require more than just suspicion and circumstantial evidence. The physical link between Bryce and Anika was significant, but Mendez wanted to close any gaps the defense could exploit. That meant tracing every step Bryce took during the crucial hours surrounding Anika's disappearance and death. Bryce's home was searched. Again, this time with more intensity. Forensic teams combed through the garage, basement, and all digital devices. In a hidden folder on his personal laptop, they discovered fragments of encrypted conversations and screenshots of payments made to various anonymous accounts. Among them were several monthly transfers labeled only by initials. One name stood out: AV. The dates matched key points in Anika's timeline, including the week she disappeared. Detectives then reached out to Jade Kingston, Bryce's former assistant, who had left his employment abruptly 6 months earlier. At first hesitant, Jade finally agreed to speak under immunity. What she revealed confirmed many of Mendez's suspicions. Jade had seen Bryce become increasingly erratic during her final months at his company. He was obsessed with a young woman, one he referred to as "my prize." Bryce never mentioned Anika by name, but he often alluded to someone he was helping, mentoring, and financially supporting. When Jade questioned the nature of their relationship, Bryce dismissed her concerns and reminded her who paid her salary. She stayed silent, but something about the way he talked unsettled her deeply. Jade remembered a specific weekend when Bryce had called her late at night, ordering her to come to the house and help clean up a wine spill in the hallway. When she arrived, the house was dimly lit, and the smell of bleach lingered in the air. She helped scrub a section of the hardwood floor near the stairs, though she never actually saw any spilled wine. Bryce was tense, sweaty, and uncharacteristically impatient. He told her not to ask questions. That was the last time she worked for him. Her resignation email followed the next day. Armed with this testimony, the prosecution began to piece together a chilling narrative. Bryce had lured Anika to his home under the pretense of a conversation, perhaps one about their arrangement or her sudden withdrawal. When she expressed her desire to end things, something inside him snapped. The idea of losing control, of being rejected, especially by someone so young and dependent on him, was intolerable. The struggle turned deadly, and instead of calling for help, he chose to conceal the crime. Digital forensics recovered location data from a smartwatch Anika had been wearing, data that placed her at Bryce's home the night she vanished. The same device went dark shortly after midnight. Combined with phone pings, surveillance gaps, and blood evidence, the case grew stronger with each passing day. But the most damning discovery came from a recovered backup of Anika's broken phone. In her encrypted journal app, hidden behind a string of code words and protected with a decoy interface, was a collection of personal entries. In those entries, Anika had detailed her growing fear. She wrote about Bryce's controlling behavior, his late-night appearances near her apartment, and the messages that blurred the line between affection and threats. She had been planning to leave the arrangement permanently and had even looked into legal help. One entry, dated just 2 days before her disappearance, read simply, "I think he's watching me. If anything happens, it's him." Those words would be read aloud in court by the prosecution, a haunting reminder of the young woman's final plea for safety. For Detective Mendez, It was a brutal but necessary validation that everything they suspected was now backed by hard evidence. Still, one question lingered in his mind. Had Anika truly known the full extent of the man she was involved with? Or had she only seen the mask, unaware of the danger that lay behind the charm? The courtroom was packed when Bryce Callahan's trial began. News crews lined the sidewalks outside, while reporters scribbled notes inside the gallery, hungry for every detail. On one side sat Anika Verma's close friends, university staff, and representatives from the Indian consulate. On the other side, Bryce's legal team, well-dressed and aggressive, prepared their defense strategy. The contrast between the two lives at the heart of the trial couldn't have been more stark. A young woman from Pune chasing dreams in Los Angeles, and a millionaire investor hiding secrets behind designer suits and philanthropic charm. The prosecution presented its case with cold precision. They began with the timeline, tracing Anika's last known movements through surveillance footage, cell tower pings, and digital data from her smartwatch. They showed images of her entering Bryce's car, the last time she was seen alive. They then moved to forensic evidence, blood-stained gloves found in Bryce's garage, Anika's shattered phone hidden in a locked toolbox, and duct tape matching that used to bind her body. Autopsy reports confirmed that the cause of death was strangulation, and the injuries on her arms suggested a violent struggle. Jade Kingston's testimony was a powerful moment. She stood, visibly shaken, as she recounted the night Bryce made her clean what he claimed was a wine spill. The bleach smell, the tension in his behavior, the refusal to let her enter certain rooms, it all painted a picture of a man desperate to cover up something far worse than a broken bottle. When she resigned the following day, she had carried that fear with her for months, unsure whether her suspicions were real or imagined. Now she had no doubt. Then came Anika's encrypted journal. The prosecution read several entries aloud, each one more chilling than the last. She had documented Bryce's controlling messages, his unannounced appearances outside her apartment, and her growing fear that he might harm her. One entry, made just 2 days before her death, stated, "He's not letting me go. I think he's following me again. I want to stop this, but I'm scared." The courtroom fell silent as the words echoed in everyone's mind, a foreshadowing of what was to come. Written by the victim herself, Bryce's defense argued that there was no direct evidence linking him to the murder. They claimed that the gloves and phone could have been planted and that Anika's journal entries were emotional exaggerations, not factual accounts. They painted her as someone living a double life, implying that others could have been involved. But their argument lacked weight in the face of overwhelming forensic and digital evidence. Even the jurors could see through the polished performance. After weeks of testimony, analysis, and emotional moments, the jury deliberated for just under a day. When they returned, the verdict was unanimous: guilty of first-degree murder. Bryce Callahan showed no emotion as the sentence was read life in prison without the possibility of parole. The courtroom erupted with mixed reactions: relief, quiet tears, and a sense of finality that justice had been served. But the story did not end there. 2 months after the trial, Dr. Lena Batt, Anika's university counselor, received a package in the mail. Inside was a small USB drive, unmarked, with a single folder titled Truth. The contents shocked her. It contained documents Anika had secretly collected, screenshots, audio recordings, and messages indicating that Bryce had been involved in a fraudulent investment scheme using shell companies and crypto assets. Anika had discovered the scam during their relationship and had been quietly gathering evidence, intending to report it. The sugar daddy arrangement had been her way in, but her goal had shifted. She wanted justice, not just for herself, but for the others Bryce had ruined. This revelation cast Anika in a new light. She wasn't just a victim, she had been fighting back. She had tried to take down a predator who had hurt others before her. Her murder now seemed not just like an act of rage, but a calculated silencing. Authorities reopened a financial crimes investigation into Bryce's companies, and several victims came forward with similar stories of manipulation and exploitation. In the end, Anika Verma's legacy became more than a tragic tale. She became a symbol of resilience, of a young woman who had tried to use the tools she had to fight back, even when the odds were stacked against her. Though her life was stolen, the truth she left behind could not be buried.